Think of all the things that kept him in power and that made his rule a rule of iron, that could not be broken. The power of guns and tanks and state and laws and governments and media, propaganda, brainwashing, fear, terror, intimidation, prisons, torture. Even the strongest superpower in the world, America, could not remove him from power. It tried with an invasion and assassination attempts. Even the fall of the Soviet Union couldn't remove him, but the Jubilee removed him. God's ancient countdown, the hand and the sovereignty of God. And that was the message that was in his land. With all his power, he became weak. As Miriam, the young Jewish maiden who was raised in the shadow of a dictator, King Herod, said in her praise to God 2,000 years ago, "He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their innermost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble." Though we don't always understand the ways of history, the end of the story belongs to God. And the end of the story reveals that in the rest of the story, God's hand was always at work. So in your life, you don't always understand what God is doing, but the end of the story belongs to God. And it will be revealed then. Sometimes God lifts the veil like at these moments and shows you a glimpse that in every moment of your story, God was at work. With Fidel Castro, every moment ended up under the sovereignty and the timing of God's hand. That all the power of man is nothing compared to the hand of the Almighty. So it was with Herod. So it was with all who rule with brutality and an iron hand. In the end, he grew weak and powerless. And here it was, the mighty Herod in the story against a little baby. The powerful Herod against the powerless baby Messiah. And yet Herod dies. The little baby survives. Even Herod, with all his ancient form of a police state, could not stop the will or the life of God. And that is what God shows again and again and again. The powerful of the world end up being weak. The weak of the world in him, his people end up being powerful. Herod, with all his power, ended up wasting away, and the baby helpless survives. Rome, with all its power to persecute the believers, with no power, no army, no police, no protection, yet Rome falls and is now nothing more than ruins, but the people of God prevailed against Rome. In the end, the Apostle Paul, with no earthly power, was stronger than Emperor Nero with all earthly power. In the end, believers with nothing literally overcame the mightiest empire on earth. The children of Israel, the Jewish people, few in number, scattered, with no army, no king, no protection, nothing. And the kingdoms of this world, each with an army and power and weapons, bent on crushing them, destroying them, annihilating them. And yet all those empires with all their power are no more. And yet that little tiny nation with no power and no protection for 2,000 years has outlasted all of them. And is as alive now as much as it ever was because of the power of God. The empires are dust, but the nation of Israel lives. And the baby of Bethlehem ends up overcoming the tyranny of Herod. Who thinks of Herod today? Mostly only those who read of the baby of Bethlehem. He grows up and is called king, but a king of a different power. With no sword, no weapon, no army, yet he has become the most powerful life person name on this planet. He has influenced the world more than any other. He has changed time. He has cut history in two. Empires, kingdoms, hearts, lives. Don't ever go on what things look like or the odds against you or the size of the problem you're dealing with. The power of God is far more powerful. That's a fact. The power of the cross is more powerful than any empire. The power of his love is more powerful than any evil, any sin, any darkness. Never believe the darkness. The light is always stronger, and in the end, it will always prevail. Fidel Castro followed a gospel called communism, which declared that God didn't exist, that man was in effect God, the state was God, and would usher in his own kingdom and paradise. But the kingdom that communism ushered in, from Lenin to Joseph Stalin to Chairman Mao to Fidel Castro, was no paradise, but a nightmare and a hell and a prison. Because it is based on a lie, because it denies the truth of God. And so it can't escape from the fact that man is sinful, from Joseph Stalin to Fidel Castro. But Jesus is the answer to the sin of man and the sin of Stalin and Marx and Castro and each of us. I pray that before he left this life, he turned back to the one from whom a boy named Faith once turned away and found forgiveness for his sins. I've wondered since that day if when Fidel Castro looked at that Jubilee trumpet I gave him, did he ever have an idea of its significance? In the biblical account, the aging King Herod dies. I watched the thousands of Cubans lining up this week to pay their last respects to their leader. They were lined up to enter into the Jose Marti Memorial if they knew they were entering a star. Fidel Castro's, his funeral took place under the same star which, as the Star of Bethlehem did for the Magi, marked for us both the ending of a dying kingdom and the birth of God's presence. The light of hope, a light shining in darkness on the island. In the same way, the castle by the sea, the fortress that represents Cuba and is named after the Magi, also contains a lighthouse. And the hope is that as Cuba once spread to the world the word of a revolution, a false gospel, that one day it will spread to the world the revolution that doesn't end in death but life, the gospel of Messiah. What we witnessed there was an old world, an old kingdom that had to die, but we also witnessed another kingdom, based not on force and the powers of state, but on love. The Jubilee was a message of ending the old kingdom, but a message of hope to the new. Fidel Castro's dying communist kingdom is filled with the presence of the true king, Yeshua, Jesus, Yesu, the Good Shepherd, the Prince of Peace, and the King of Kings. He is there. He is there in the makeshift churches. He's there in homes. He's there in the streets. He's there among the youth. Castro grew old, but Jesus, Yeshua, is as alive today as much as he's ever been, as he was on the day of the revolution and years before it when he walked the streets of Israel. Castro has passed away, as did King Herod, as do all the kings and rulers of this world, as do all those who, as Castro once did, tried to stamp out the gospel. He tried to rule Jesus out of Cuba. He tried to legislate him out of Cuba. He tried to brainwash him out, intimidate him out, silence him out, arrest him out. He tried to imprison him out, torture him out. But today, Sunday, December 4th, Castro's ashes were laid to rest. But the presence of Jesus is as alive on that island as it ever was. And after all the persecution, the revival that we witnessed beginning there has not been stamped out, has not stopped, but has continued to spread. And he is continuing to transform the lives of the people of Cuba in a way that Castro never could. For kings and kingdoms, rulers and tyrants all pass away, but the name of Messiah remains. Marx is gone, Lenin is gone, Stalin is gone, Mao is gone, and now Fidel Castro is gone, but Jesus is still here. They are dead and gone, but Jesus is alive. Yeshua is alive. Messiah is alive. The Redeemer lives. The light of the world lives. The hope of Israel lives. And no power on earth can stop him. No power of darkness can overcome him. No power of hell can defeat him. And if he is your God and you're in him, then no power on earth can stop you. No power of darkness can overcome you. And no power of hell can defeat you to stop your light from shining. Our God lives. Our God reigns. reigns, and his kingdom will have no end, and he will be with you always, even to the end of the age. And the government shall rest upon his shoulder, and he shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. Jesus, Yeshua, the hope of the hopeless, the Star of Jacob, the King lives, and the revolution goes on. Amen and amen.
To find out how you can receive more of Jonathan's teachings, to receive special free gifts, or get in touch, go to hopeoftheworld.org or call toll-free 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's hopeoftheworld.org or call 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's 1-800-937-4821. You can also get more at Jonathan Cahn's Facebook page or write us direct at Hope of the World, Box 1111, Lodi, New Jersey 07644, USA. Hope of the World is dedicated to the goal of spreading God's Word and salvation to every land and people. We do this by spreading the Word throughout the world and sponsoring compassion projects to the most poor and needy around the earth. To get in touch or have a part in God's work, just write to Hope of the World, Box 1111, Lodi, New Jersey 07644, USA. Or go to hopeoftheworld.org or call 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's 1-800-937-4821.